but he's all of a sudden, kind of out of nowhere, deeply concerned about the plight of.
So all of a sudden,
but he's all of a sudden, kind of out of nowhere, deeply concerned about the plight of Christians in Nigeria, which I want to restate. Maybe a totally valid concern. I don't know. But that's weird.
No, let me go ahead and interject right there. Dear Sir Qatarlson, Your Majesty, His Highness, Sheikh. Yeah. Turns out that there actually is cause for concern in Nigeria, more specifically in the northern and central region of Nigeria, as far as Christians being under not just persecution, but being slaughtered on a daily basis because of their faith. That actually is happening. Now, for somebody who has pretended that there has been a genocide, and somebody who has been so concerned about this quote unquote genocide in Gaza, which never happened, did not exist, unless, of course, you're talking about the one at the hands of Hamas, the one you pretend never happened as well. Yeah, turns out that this actual genocide that people are starting to care about because it's being brought to their awareness is real. That's no pun intended on the is real part, but yeah, it's real. Let's continue.
That all of a sudden everybody's concerned about people who clearly have no track record of being interested in Christians at all, including Ted Cruz. What is going on?
All of a sudden, people who have no track record of being concerned with Christians. Okay, let's go ahead and just take that premise as reality. So let's say Ted Cruz has never cared about Christians ever until this point. No track record, right? Okay. So let's say all of a sudden Ted Cruz wakes up one morning and he goes, wow, there are Christians that are being genocided in Nigeria. I care. Let me speak up about it. That right there means that a man who you allege has never cared about Christians all of a sudden cares about Christians. So technically speaking, if this were, let's say, a sport of some sort, and we're keeping score, Ted would be 1, and you, sir, Your Highness, Sheikh, His Majesty, would be 0. See, Ted 1 for caring for Christians and you 0. Because up to this point, we have not heard a reference of the Christians being slaughtered. And now that we have, it is actually you questioning this genocide. Now, it seems that Ted has been your sort of focus as far as discrediting what is happening in Nigeria. But I'm going to go ahead and just bring a couple more voices into the conversation that I feel do matter. So the first is actually less of a voice and more of just a display. I wonder if His Highness could please alert every single, let me go ahead and actually run this back. Would he be willing to alert every single one of these individuals here that there is indeed no mass slaughtering of Christians in Nigeria? And for every one of those boxes, mind you, they're running out of boxes at this point. They're burying multitudes of people at the same time, massive holes, because they can't do individual funerals because this is a genocide, an actual one, a real one. So as you see on my screen, one box after the other, and a multitude of people, likely family members, community members, etc., who are gathered for a mass funeral. This is happening on a daily basis in Nigeria. Now, that's the first voice that I would likely listen to. The second voice I might listen to is, maybe it's our president. Let's go ahead and get into that.
Government continues to allow the killing of Christians, the USA will immediately stop all aid and assistance to Nigeria. We're going to do things to Nigeria that Nigeria is not going to be happy about and may very well go into that now disgraced country, guns are blazing, to completely wipe out the Islamic terrorists who are committing these horrible, horrible atrocities. I'm hereby instructing our Department of War to prepare for possible action. If we attack, it will be fast, vicious, and sweet, just like the terrorist thugs attack our cherished Christians.
That we're seeing now.
So I would start there, right? If you want to update yourself, maybe you want to check with the president, who's actually been talking about this for years at this point. And now that he is back in a position of power, he's doing something about it. So I would put President Trump at 1 on the scoreboard as well. So you're still at 0. Ted has 1. President Trump has 1. All right. Now, I want to share a story with His Majesty. And this might be a story that you guys have already heard this far. It was actually brought to my awareness by a brother who came onto this platform, Brother Stephen, who is a Christian Nigerian that happened to come on this platform and bring up a reason of concern about Christians being slaughtered in his country where he lives, where he actually is right now. So this is a story about a young woman by the name of Deborah Samuel. Now, this young lady committed the crime of celebrating her test score by crediting this success to Jesus Christ. Something that if most of us did or even saw somebody else doing, whether you are a believer or you are secular, heck, you might even be, one of these wokety woke folk, and it's not necessarily going to be a cause for, much more than just a subtweet or, a little insult online or something of that nature. And as a believer, it's something that you would probably be aligned with, right? We want to celebrate God for all victory in our lives. So anyway, Deborah is then targeted by a few of her classmates, or at least her peers, for what they deemed as blasphemy towards their quote unquote prophet Muhammad. Yeah. Same guy who consummated quote unquote a marriage. It's not a real marriage because it was a 6-year-old. So it wasn't real, right? We have another word for what that was. But anyway, this celebration and mentioning of Jesus was seen as blasphemous towards their own God. Deborah was targeted. She was attacked. She was actually dragged out of her residency. She was stoned. I'm not talking about like marijuana. No, I mean literally stoned. They threw rocks at this young woman. You know what? Let me go ahead and bring up a picture of her. Because we need to humanize folks. Especially when you're sharing a story like this. For some people, they could write it off and it could not necessarily be that poignant because, there's no face to the name. So this is the young lady in question. So this young lady was dragged out. She was stoned. She was set on fire. And she was hung up in a tree. You know who did it? Islamists. Now, the reason I'm bringing this story up here is because as a result of northern Nigeria being completely conquered and captured by the Islamists and their Sharia, or, their Islamic law, instead of this young woman here, it's this side of my screen, instead of this young woman here receiving justice for her brutal massacring, she's a victim of this genocide, targeting Christians or non-believers. Instead of justice, what she got was the celebration of the people who did this to her. Not just by the fellow students, which is sick enough, but by the government who enabled it and let it essentially slip under the radar, did nothing about it. This is the very same Sharia that is now being diluted by the likes of His Highness, the Sheikh or the Shah, adopted into the family of Qatar. Sir Qatarlson.
Who would have thought that Tucker Carlson, of all people, would sit there and be the #1 advocate against Zionism in America today? Did you guys see the Ted Cruz interview where Tucker Carlson rips into Ted Cruz and just completely destroys him?
Sharia law is bad, Seth. I don't know if you've heard that. It's bad. It's worse than what's happening in New York and Detroit. It's just bad.
Now, do y'all think it is possible that maybe, just maybe, the reason why Sir Qatarlson doesn't necessarily know whether or not there really is a genocide, if there's cause for concern, not even the genocide, he said cause for concern. Do you think that it is possible that the reason why he has no idea whether there is cause for concern is because he has now been adopted by the jihadists? That he is now the new favorite adopted son of Islam? Do y'all think that's possible? This is a man who went from, I'm talking about a decade and a half ago, being one of the most outspoken anti-Islamic voices in mainstream media. And when I say that, I'm not talking, look, Pastor Greg Locke said in a video I was listening to this morning, I think it was him. If I miscredit this, I apologize to whoever actually said this, but Islam is not a race. Islam is a ideology, or it's a religion. It is a conquering, colonizing religion. So it just so happened to make its way into many of the quote unquote black and brown communities. Go figure. But do y'all think it is possible that maybe, just maybe, the reason why he cannot express any sort of care and concern about fellow Christians, well, fellow would actually assume that you are a Christian. So let me go ahead and tuck that for the moment being, no pun intended. Maybe, just maybe, it is possible that this is a man whose allegiance is with the Islamists, and therefore criticism of Islam in any form or fashion would mean a likely pay cut at the very best and a full-blown, getting cut off the supply chain. Is it possible that his newly adopted father, His Highness, His Majesty himself, may just cut off his adopted son from the newly found funds? Is it possible? I think so. Let us continue.
Let me just say, I would be totally comfortable sharing condolences with Osama bin Laden's family. I hate Osama bin Laden. On the other hand, if somebody dies, it's okay to say, I'm sorry to his family that
he had a toddler.
You guys, he had a toddler. Osama bin Laden, the architect of September 11th, the most traumatic day in American history thus far, he had toddler. Now, I don't know what context this would come up in. I really don't. And I am a man who is constantly in conversation, right? This is what I do for a living. And not once has simping for Osama ever come up. There's more.
I'm saying, you can't claim that they're in Hamas while simultaneously claiming that Hamas is a group of jihadis. They're Islamic extremists, which they also claim constantly, which I don't know if that's true, by the way. It seems more like a political organization, but whatever it is.
All right. Seems that we are in need of a little bit of a debriefing on Hamas, right? Just a quick crash course. So Hamas is what we would call, what they would call a jihadist organization, a jihadist group. Glad we cleared that up. Now, whether or not they're a terrorist organization would likely be determined by whether or not they commit acts of terror, right? Because if we have somebody who lies, we call them a liar. If we have somebody who steals, we call them a thief, not a stealer. I don't know how they put that together, but they're a thief. If we have somebody who commits acts of terror, i.e. Hamas, they're a terrorist organization, not a political movement, unless the political movement is to move them into greater acts of terrorism. I really hope that helps. Now, again, the very same man who does not know whether or not there is cause for concern in Nigeria, when 8 to 32 Christians are being slaughtered every single day, and this has been happening for 2 decades now. If that man doesn't have enough intel to know whether or not Hamas is indeed a jihadist group, I would recommend getting off camera indefinitely. And like, okay, you can start with the Google search and then we'll go from there, right? Then we'll get to books, and then we'll get to having conversations with non-discredited individuals who actually know what they're talking about, as opposed to being obsessed with the Jews, right? That can't be the only subject that the people that you sit across from are interested in. You got to sit with people who actually maybe have been there. You know, have you been there? They've been there. They've interacted, interfaced. You might even want to talk to, I don't know, like a member of Hamas outside of payroll. Okay. Now, outside of, now, of course, again, I understand that Hamas's leaders are stationed in your adopted country, Qatar. But just, you know, maybe some guys who are in the tunnels right now. There's like 200 or so stuck in a tunnel somewhere. Maybe you can interview some of those guys and ask them what they are, and they would likely just tell you straight up, unless it is a takia type of day. Let us continue.
They're telling us constantly they're Al-Qaeda. So it can't also be true that Christians are a member of Al-Qaeda. Sorry.
Yeah.
So then we know they're not in Hamas. So why did they get killed? Why was their church?
I've never been to Saudi Arabia, and I can't wait to go for.
There's the adoptive family in question right there. If you guys were wondering who these people are that I speak of.
Arabia, and I can't wait to go.
Right there. It's a family reunion.
For a glimpse of what the future holds, because that's what you see when you go to the Gulf.
Because it's of its scale, its significance in Islam.
He's like, you know what Islam means? Submission. And like, let it hang in the air. Like that was self-evidently disgusting. And I was like, I kind of think submission to God is like the whole point of life, but I didn't say anything. I was like, I don't think I'm against that, actually.
And there we have it. Submission to the God, small g, of Islam. Turns out that he's not exactly against that. Now, mind you, this is a man who professes to be a Christian, a believer in Jesus Christ, that somehow has enough space to not necessarily be against false gods, against idols. So long as they pay well, if they pay better than the next person, then he is open for business. That's where we are with Sir Qatarlson. Now, again, I want to bring it back to the point at hand. What is happening to Christians in Nigeria has been covered up by a few parties. Most importantly is Nigeria's own government. Now, of course, Nigeria is currently under the rulership of an Islamist, a man who is a part of, or at least in proxy to, the Islamic Brotherhood. He holds relationships with those who are in the core of the Islamic Brotherhood, and they have their own fraction of it, or their own, I guess, department, for lack of a better term, in Nigeria. They are one and the same. How is it that this is allowed to happen? I mean, if we had, and thankfully I can still say this today, if we had Christians in America today being slaughtered, just one a day, well, I guess technically, because we got the leftists here, it probably wouldn't get much airtime. But okay, if we had Muslims being assassinated one a day, being targeted, they don't even have to have their lives taken, just being targeted, right? People just harassing them. This would be global news tomorrow. If every day just one. Yet on average in the last 7 months, I believe it's been around 7,000 Christians that have been slaughtered. If that happened to any group, any ethnic group, any religious group in the West, it would be constant news. Yet when it comes to Nigeria, it's been silence. Again, because from the top down, they've been looking to cover this up. And it is on one part because they're also embarrassed about it. They don't want to look bad. It's like, what do we look like? And then on the other side, they're simply covering up for their own. You know, sprinkle a little bit of tequila on there. If you don't know what that is, I suggest you look it up. You'll be pleasantly surprised. Now, the last segment I want to get into here is to do with the newly crowned king of communism, Lord Zoran Mamdani himself. And this is something that actually came across my desk maybe 3 or 4 days ago, or at least the first piece of this, right? Where turns out that not only does Mr. America First not really have any sort of real criticism around the election of Lord Zoran, it actually seems to be the exact opposite. And this turns out as a trend. So let us continue. All right. So right here's a screenshot that I came across. Hope y'all can see this. This is essentially a search on how many times has Sir Qatarlson actually written about Lord Zoran. How many times has he spoken on an imminent threat to the United States? And I mean what I say. Just the communist part by itself, or the quote unquote democratic socialist aspect of it, is problematic, let alone the jihadism, which a lot of folks out there, when I first said that, this was months ago, they called me an Islamophobe. Well, it turns out that this is a guy who I believe was he arrested the day after October 7th, 2023, when he was out there protesting in celebration, in essence. It's the same guy who sympathizes with those who are responsible for September the 11th. Go figure that a guy like that would be in the good graces of Sir Qatarlson. So let us continue.
That guy was the only person in the New York City mayor's debate to say he wanted to focus on New York City. All the candidates were asked, if you could visit a foreign country, what would it be? And they, of course, all had an answer. I think most said Israel. Great. And he said, I wouldn't go anywhere. I'd stay in New York. And like, if I want to meet Jewish constituents, I go to their synagogues, their homes, or whatever. But I'd be here in New York because that's what I'm doing. I'm running New York. That's my job.
Well, he gave the right answer.
He gave the right.
Looky here. Now, I got time today, but she's going to have her time in court or back in court in the next couple of days. She has been on a historic run, I tell you. Historic. She's probably going to run as a Democrat.
Well, he gave the right answer.
He gave the right answer. He gave the right answer, at least. And he's talking. I totally oppose his program. Just
Absolutely.
To be clear. I don't think it works. But he's talking about economics.
Yep.
And everyone else is talking about foreign policy. Why is it hard to talk about economics, domestic economics?
Interesting. I'm sure that would have nothing to do with the fact that Sir Qatarlson is obsessed with the Jewish people, as are, I'm sure, most of his adopted family members. Technically, that's literally all they ever talk about, obsess over, and are fixated on destroying. But anyway, let us continue. So here is I guess it's a mass email. People who are on Qatarlson's email list received this here about a day or two ago. So this goes, Jews for Mamdani. You saw the campaign attacks against Zoran Mamdani. He's a socialist. True. He's a communist. Possibly true. Okay. He's an anti-Semite. Wait, what? Let me ask y'all a quick question. How long do you think Sir Qatarlson can last without either a word about or a thought about the Jews? Like, for me, I see it as somebody submerged in water. How long can you last without breathing underwater? I think I got like a good 45 seconds or something like that. I haven't been working on my lung capacity as of recent, but maybe I can do more. I don't know. How long do you think this man can last underwater? Just, he can't have one word, one thought about a Jew. Y'all let me know in the comments. An anti-Semite. Wait, what? Yeah. Is the incoming mayor a fan of Israel? Does he want America to fight for its wars? Not particularly, but a Jew hater? That's a different conversation. We've never seen anything to suggest that he falls into that ugly camp, because he doesn't. He plainly said so yesterday during his victory speech. Folks, can you give me any sort of scenario where it was necessary to put this email out? To publish this to one person privately, let alone to his entire email list? If this man is not literally campaigning for Jihad Mamdani, why? We haven't gotten an email about what may be happening in Nigeria, which I guess, again, he doesn't have enough time to look into, but he definitely has enough time to send this email. Let us continue. Because he doesn't. He plainly said so yesterday. You should believe him. Trust him, bro. Yeah. Same guy's going to give you all free stuff. And now some of the folks in his own inner circles are complaining that they had to pay $13 for a cup of Bud Light at his inauguration party. Or not inauguration, but his election party. And numerous times throughout the summer and fall. That still didn't stop the ethno-narcissist from slandering him as some sort of dark force plotting to install the Fourth Reich in America's largest city. I think y'all are doing a better job of that. Yeah. You and the Mexican white supremacist Nick Fuentes. Rabbi Elliot Cosgrove called Mamdani a danger to the security of the New York Jewish community. Well, here's the thing. In the last month alone, 60 to 65% of hate crimes have been targeted towards Jews in New York. Now, of course, they got the little video circulating of the guy in the cowboy hat. They're saying, oh, it's an inside job. You see, they're doing it themselves. Guy in a cowboy hat. You couldn't even have the decency to get a real, just an actual Orthodox Jewish attire at all. That just didn't cross that dude's mind on the bike. If you guys know the guy I'm talking about, just didn't cross your mind, right? Okay. I'm surprised that wasn't Qatarlson himself. That might have been him. Over 600 other religious leaders signed a letter saying he encourages and exacerbates hostility towards Judaism and Jews. Former Congressman Jason Chaffetz? We'll go with Chaffetz. Claimed with a straight face that the mayor-elect just wants to eradicate Jews. He's a murderous anti-Semite just like the Nazis. Is that not slander? Now, see, here's the thing. When you express your allegiance to an ideology that states the following: erase, eradicate all Jews from the river to the sea. When you stand in allegiance with that sort of ideology, I would assume that maybe, just maybe, you don't like the Jews. Now, sure, you might throw in a little yarmulke and, parade around the liberal leftist Jews and pretend as if you care, right? The old pandering to whatever audience that you were in front of at that point in time. But some of us happen to see right through that, and we see you for what you actually are, according to your own actions and your own words. You are a jihadist. You believe in globalizing the intifada. You are a Muslim before you are an American, right? According to your speech. I'm guessing that's something that didn't make it into this newsletter publication over here. That you're going to turn New York into a city of immigrants, or it will remain a city of immigrants run by an immigrant.
New York will remain a city of immigrants, a city built by immigrants, powered by immigrants, and as of tonight, led by an immigrant.
So in conclusion, His Highness, Your Majesty, it turns out there is cause for concern about what is happening to Christians in Nigeria. I would just take some time off of the Jew thing for a second, right? I'll just literally just seconds, and take those few seconds and just dive into the stories of Christians in Nigeria. We'll get you a good 1 on the scoreboard there. We might even get you up to 2 or 3 of caring for actual Christians. But of course, I would recommend starting as being a Christian instead of you yourself trying to get gotcha moments off of actual Christians who believe in God's promises of those who bless Israel are blessed and those who curse Israel cursed. That's my suggestion. So please don't chop my head off. I know that, your ilk have that tendency, but I pray that you have grace in this very moment. And if you don't and you end up doing it anyway, then, to live is Christ, to die is gain. So just going to be changing addresses. All the best, buddy. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Now, if you'd like to stay around, make sure to click that little subscribe button down there, or you can show some love by going to the description below and clicking on the button titled Buy Me a Coffee. Leave a little something there, or click on the Cash App. Leave a little something here. Till the next time, peace.
I've been up for hours, I've been up for days, staring at the ceiling, I've been counting strays, I've been in my feelings, I've been out of mind, I've been getting visions of the other kind, I've been up for weeks, I'm in the count of blessings over count of sheep, I can never be the type to limit when it comes to me, I used to be the pleaser for the people.